Welcome to CTV News Trendline with Michael Stittle and Nik Nanos.
Nik, it's been about 2 weeks, let's say, since the federal budget and a visit from U.S. President Joe Biden. That's enough time to track any movement in Liberal support. What are you seeing?
Are we going to call it the dead cat bounce? Because the Liberals were behind before the Biden visit and the budget. Right now, the latest Nanos polling has the Liberals, the Conservatives, I should say, 36, up 3 points compared to 4 weeks ago. Liberals at 31, up 2. NDP 18, down 3. Bloc 6, down a bit. Green Party 5. People's Party at 3. So what can we say? So they're up 2 points compared to 4 weeks ago, like before the budget. Not really a bounce, that's for sure. And the Conservatives still have an advantage outside of the margin of error. So perhaps the trend will continue, but you know, the reality is the Liberals were trailing going into the Biden and budget segment. They're still trailing. You know, they're back by 5, but you know, I guess maybe the good news is that the NDP are down and the Bloc are down. Two key things, because the Liberals need the NDP to be down in order to make sure that those vote splits don't occur. And also, whenever the Bloc is down in the province of Quebec, that's usually good news for the Liberal Party of Canada.
Well, it's a tough week ahead, potentially, for the Liberal Party. The Prime Minister office Chief of Staff, Katie Telford, will be testifying in front of a House committee looking into allegations of foreign election interference. Who is Katie Telford? How would you describe her, Nik?
Well, I would describe her, and I'd like to say I've never met her or spoken to her. I would describe her just as an observer, smart, focused, disciplined. You know, she's a long-serving chief of staff to the Prime Minister. And you know what? Chief of staffs don't usually last as long as she has. You know, it's usually a couple years. The fact that she was there at ground zero, kind of the Plymouth Rock, if there is such a thing, for the Trudeau movement before he was even leader, and the fact that she transitioned from working on his campaign team to being the chief of staff, and I would say successfully serving as his chief of staff, speaks to her importance to Justin Trudeau on a professional basis, and that she would be one of the, I'd call her, she'd be like one of the rocks on the team that would be a go-to advisor that would you know, help support the work of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. So very important person, very capable. No big mistakes. I don't think there's, you know, it's easy to make a mistake when you're in politics. I don't really see any significant major mistakes in terms of her trajectory as chief of staff. So pretty solid.
It is remarkable. I was going through the list, you know, of former chiefs of staffs over the past few decades, and most of them, as you say, Nik, are 2 or 3 years. I think there's only one who lasted 8 years, and matching Telford. It's a pretty impressive political accomplishment.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I would hazard to say that perhaps there's an understanding or an expectation that she would serve out perhaps the full term with Justin Trudeau as long as he was Prime Minister, which would also be, I would say, precedent setting almost in the modern era for sure, where we'd have a chief of staff there on day one to the very end of a mandate. And you know what? Justin Trudeau, he's been in power since 2015, so it's not like he was a short-term Prime Minister. But I think there's an expectation, or the idea at least, that there's a possibility that she would serve as long as Justin Trudeau was the Prime Minister.
Now, just looking at the political risk for this appearance on Friday, Nik, I mean, the optics are never good, I'd say, when people see a picture of a chief of staff testifying anywhere. What do you think the Conservatives are looking for from this?
Well, I think they're looking for a number of things. First of all, you know, and what a win would look like would be for Telford to make a mistake while on the stand. And I think I'm not sure how likely that is because she is a very focused, disciplined individual. And she also knows the file, obviously. So she's very well briefed. She probably knows more about the file than most of the parliamentarians that might be trying to cross-examine her. But you know, the thing is, the stakes are quite high because you know the thing is you know right now it'll be a pressure cooker for the government and specifically for Justin Trudeau's chief of staff.
Mm.
And they'll, that it's not a win situation, right?
Mm.
The question is can they get through this without any major political turbulence? Because from my perspective, at least for Canadians, they're not necessarily going to listen to the testimony. They're going to perhaps read the news, but it's going to be the picture, so that and the optics. And whenever any political staffer, and especially when a senior political staffer to a prime minister has to testify before the House of Commons, it's never usually good news. It's usually result of an issue that needs to be managed.
Well, Nik, let's listen to Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau talking ahead of this appearance.
See, leaked intelligence reports that the Liberal Party received help in multiple elections from the communist government in Beijing, which wanted to keep the Prime Minister in place. We know that his top campaign officials like Katie Telford would have been aware of this help, and we need to know exactly what she knew and what the Prime Minister knew. Only she can answer these questions.
But he's hoping that if he attacks our institutions with a flamethrower, maybe he's going to be able to win. Well, that sounds like a really great way of making sure that all Canadians lose.
Yeah, very, very strong words from both sides. And I should say, Nik, this won't be the first time that Poilievre and Telford have met in a committee testimony.
Absolutely. And, the other thing that we should expect from Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives, they might be asking questions that might sound a little weird, but that's probably because they're thinking about their social media and YouTube strategy. And so they're going to go into this thinking, what is the clip that they're going to get? What is the exchange that they want to get on the record that they could use in social media, that they could use on YouTube, and perhaps even use in the future, depending on what happens during the testimony, to use it in the future in an attack campaign. So we might see Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives kind of have a bit of a different tact because of their focus and the imperative for them to create content to galvanize the Conservative core and try to shake the Liberals. And, this is a prime opportunity. We were talking about the Nanos ballot numbers. The Conservatives still have about a 5-point advantage. If things go sideways for the Liberals in this testimony, especially with the Chief of Staff, that could help consolidate the Conservative advantage. Likewise, if the Liberals get through this without any significant damage, that could help them further narrow the gap between the Conservatives and the Liberals. So the stakes for this testimony are extremely high. It is a very uncertain, unpredictable environment. Emotions will be raw, and expect, Justin Trudeau talked about a flamethrower. Well, you know what? I expect the Conservatives to show up with a flamethrower for the interview or with the questions that they'll have for the Chief of Staff of the Prime Minister.
Now, Telford was an accomplished debater in university. I mean, and I just going back and looking at her tangle with Poilievre during the We Charity testimony. She's more than capable of holding her own. But it sounds like her strategy might be to be boring, I suppose. Yeah,
well, boring works, right, for politicians. I think the one risk is if there's anything that the Conservatives or any of the parliamentarians have in terms of her connection to China, that would be a bit of a game changer, because we've just seen recently that the Trudeau Foundation Executive Board has recently stepped down because of monies that they accepted from an individual connected to the Chinese government. So I think the big question is will there be anything new? If there's nothing new, expect the Liberals to kind of sleepwalk through this testimony and hope that it's a non-issue. But if there's any kind of new revelation related to Chinese interference or alleged Chinese interference or influence, it'll give more oxygen, not just to the focus that Canadians now have on alleged interference from China in our democracy. It'll also probably help the Conservatives in the short term.
obviously a very, very different situation, but I also remember when Trudeau's former chief secretary, Gerald Butts, was entangled in the SNCLavalin scandal and ended up resigning, to take the pressure away from the Prime Minister, of course. And then he himself ended up testifying in front of the House committee after that.
Yeah, and maybe that's one of the lessons. If you're in the Conservative war room, you're thinking, okay, during the SNC-Lavalin controversy, we had there were a couple of ministers that ended up resigning, but also one of the Prime Minister's key advisors ended up stepping down. During the We Charity, they had a cabinet minister, Morneau, step down. For the Conservatives, what they are probably hoping for is some type of win where there's some sort of senior resignation that is connected to Justin Trudeau.
Nik, we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to look at the top issue facing Canadians. Nik, so you track the issues that matter most to Canadians, and I mean, there's some big ones out there: the economy, environment, housing. It goes on. What is number one these days?
Well, it's basically a statistical tie factoring the margin of error. Healthcare has been the focus for Canadians for a significant part of 2023. We had the big healthcare deal between the federal government and the provinces. So we still have healthcare at around 16% nationally as a top national issue of concern. It's down about 4 points in the last 4 weeks. We have jobs in the economy basically within the margin of error at 14, inflation at 10, environment 9, national security at 5, debt 4, cost of living 3. The interesting thing, Michael, is roll up. So healthcare is at 16, but if you roll up all these economic measures or these economic things, kind of like the cost of living, debt, inflation, jobs in the economy, it's like a smorgasbord of concern, but it adds up to about 3 out of every 10 Canadians focused on meat and potatoes issues directly related to their pocketbook or to the economy. So what we're seeing right now, at least in 2023, is a move away from issues like healthcare and now a greater focus on those economic issues.
We just saw a federal budget. Provincial governments are tackling this, and it just does not seem to be going away. I mean, it's an ongoing political issue that seems to just be getting worse.
Yeah, because I think Canadians are worried about where the economy is going to be. In our weekly consumer confidence tracking for Bloomberg News, consumer confidence is not positive. Hasn't been positive like for 6 months. It hasn't been positive. It's still in net negative territory, moving towards neutral. But the reality is Canadians are still worried about paying for the rent. They're still worried about paying for groceries, and there's a massive dark cloud over a significant number of Canadians who are just worried about paying the bills this week. So there's a significant level of grumpiness right now and uncertainty related to the economy. And we don't know really what's going to happen in 2023. There'll probably be some sort of downturn. Hopefully it won't be that bad. But, Canadians are buckling up for the worst.
We see it become a major, source of political debate in the House of Commons. I'm curious how you think the NDP has been handling it lately.
Well, interestingly, there's been some downward pressure on the NDP numbers in our ballot tracking, especially coming out of the budget, which means they've kind of been a non-entity on this. And what's been in the news for the New Democrats? Not a lot. And the thing is that when healthcare was on the upswing, that was actually a good period for both the Liberals and the New Democrats when their numbers were up. Now if there's an increasing focus on economic issues like jobs and inflation and the debt and the cost of living and stuff like that, my sense is that this usually favors the Conservatives. So it'll be interesting to see the Conservative numbers. But the NDP have to reinsert themselves in the debate. The budget has been presented, but there's still going to be that whole process of the vote in the House of Commons. That's going to be a key opportunity for the NDP to kind of get their message out, not just on things like healthcare, where we know the NDP have credibility, but on fiscal issues and economic issues, which is what Canadians want to hear about from all of the federal party leaders.
I mean, the reason I single out the NDP is I feel like cost of living is sort of an NDP issue, but economic stewardship, people might think more about the Conservatives and Liberals.
Yeah,
I think it's
yeah,
fair to say.
yeah, absolutely. The Conservatives, usually the Prime Minister, whoever happens to be the Prime Minister of the day, does well on economic stewardship.
Hmm.
Right now, we're in an environment where Pierre Poilievre, the leader of the opposition, is actually doing very decently and very competitive with Justin Trudeau on fiscal stewardship, and and having a bit of an advantage, which is unusual for the leader of the opposition. But for the New Democrats, when we think about that cost of living, also as part of that mix is housing, and housing and the cost of housing is something that the NDP could use as a lever in order to engage Canadians, because the New Democrats have credibility not just on things like healthcare, but also on things like affordable housing.
Interesting. Nik, I think we'll leave it there for this episode. As always, thanks very much.
Take it easy.